The Dallas Cowboys are in the market for a linebacker. We'll tell you three options that they might be able to get from picks 20 on next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the number one sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the top non-Sonny Styles linebackers in the 2026 NFL draft, because Landon, you and I both know their Cowboys are in the linebacker market. We expect them to be aggressive in free agency, but this is also a really deep linebacker class and there's talent galore. And I want to start with CJ Allen, and it's not hard to draw some of the connections that the Cowboys have with CJ Allen. He's been mocked to Dallas in several mock drafts at pick number 20. What did you see from Allen when you put on the tape?
Not what I expected to see. I'll put it that way, right? Like he's a kind of an undersized linebacker, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But he's got decent length. He's got big hands. He's well proportioned. He could probably gain to add some muscle mass in his lower half, it feels like. But again, like the brain of a Georgia defense that is very similar to what the key would be playing in Dallas. Georgia runs that kind of gap in the half scheme, a lot of mint tight stuff that the Cowboys are also going to be running. And he was the brain of that defense. There's no way. He's that kind of epitome of a Mike linebacker, barking directions and smacking defensive linemen into the correct spots. And he plays, like I said, just like with a Mike mentality. Like he's a C gap to C gap defender, right? Despite not being very big, he is immediately ready to mix it up with interior offensive linemen, and he will jolt them with the strike. And I think that's what I meant by by not what I expected. Is I expected this guy that is 6'2", 6'1", 230 pounds, with 31 and a half inch arms, to be, and a Georgia linebacker, right? Like to be this uber athletic will linebacker type who is between the sideline to sideline defender. And that isn't quite what this guy is. He is a downhill striker, is just in the body of a will linebacker. He's got great strike accuracy to go with his great hand strength. He consistently gets into much longer offensive linemen's chests and can jolt a man who weighs 100 pounds more than him backwards. He sorts through the trash well. He uses his feet to subtly dodge contact while working his way to the ball carrier. You see that consistently. He's ducking and dodging direct contact from blockers. He doesn't quite have the long speed of a top end sideline to sideline athlete. Like I said, doesn't play slow necessarily, but he just doesn't have that sixth gear to kick into to kind of erase an angle when he's getting a fast player like on a jet sweep. Then the guy's got an angle to the corner. He's not going to necessarily beat their fastest guy to the sideline, right? Doesn't take a lot of false steps versus play action, though. He's slow plays on the snap, and part of that is the scheme that he plays in. But part of it, I think, is that he understands how to kind of read and then react and not necessarily over adjust on play action, that sort of thing. Very solid tackler, gets his body ready for contact, wraps up the ball carrier with consistent technique. And that's kind of what you're looking for. You just don't want to see a guy who's constantly striking in different areas and not getting his arms wrapped around all the time. His tackle technique is very consistent. He's
got power. I was saying there's some legitimate power to his game that, frankly, the Cowboys haven't had that linebacker in a while now.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the power in his hands and his arms is specifically why I think he's a first-round pick, because these guys are a little bit rare nowadays. I mean, everybody's kind of a run and hit linebacker nowadays because that's sort of where the game is trending. But he can do the run and hit stuff. But on top of that, he is very good at taking on blocks and hitting ball carriers in the hole and jolting the ball loose in that sort of way. Real quick, just to finish up, he's got very clean footwork and dropping into his zone. I'd be a little wary about him playing a ton of man coverage with shiftier backs, but he could definitely get into a zone and is comfortable doing that. Where does he win? He's an old school Mike linebacker and a new school Will linebacker body. Unanswered questions: will he be a liability in like more advanced coverages that are going to require him to cover a like a running back on a wheel route up the field? That sort of
Sure. And he is very young. He's 21 years old. He played in a complex defense. They basically gave him the reins and he called everything. So there's a lot to like. You kind of at the very end, you were talking about the coverage stuff, and that's what concerns me. Like there is some legitimate bad coverage reps from him on tape, and it's only going to get worse in the NFL. That doesn't mean that he's not a useful player, but you also find these type of linebackers in free agency every year that cost you like 6 or 7 million. I'm not opposed to drafting CJ Allen, but I feel like the skill set, while it is somewhat rare to find, it does feel replaceable. Like you can get Robert Spillane's fairly easily, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to get him.
I think I'm going to push back a little bit because I think we agree on the player. I think that finding this kind of player who can do what Robert Spillane, I think he's a little bit better in coverage than that, to the point where I don't know that he's a huge liability. And I think that's where I think I see value with him.
I see him as somebody that drops into zone coverage, but I mean, anytime my issue is anytime that he's running laterally is when I think he gets in trouble.
I think that's fair. He certainly is better coming downhill, but I also think finding these types of guys they basically been hunt to extinction at this point, And so I think he is the rare combination of good enough in coverage while being as top end as you can get nowadays at taking on blocks, getting downhill, defeating blocks, and being a true Mike linebacker.
And again, I don't want it to sound like I'm dogging out CJ Allen because he's a good player, but the way, again, this might be a mistake for me. You tell me if I'm wrong. I have this really jaded view of viewing linebackers in the sense of like, is this a guy that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay would pick on relentlessly in coverage, right? Because we've seen them do that before. They target your least athletic linebacker and they just spam plays over and over and over to take advantage of that. Would you be concerned about Allen that way?
No, because I think he is good about, like I said, being very deliberate before pulling the trigger. And I think that's actually what kind of makes him look slower at times, is that he is intentionally not pulling the trigger maybe as quickly as to make sure he's correct before he's going. And again, I think also part of what we're seeing is him playing the gap and a half scheme, right? And the gap and a half scheme naturally makes you have to be wary of the backside gap from where the play is going. So when play action is happening, you can't just run to the spot. Like the rules are telling you can't. You have to be accountable for the backside of the gap, and that naturally helps you slow play action. And I kind of gives you an answer there. So the answer to your question is, in a normal scheme, would I be worried about this? Yes, I think I might be a little bit worried about him being susceptible. But in this scheme, I think he's set up to very well play action because he's fitting inside of a system that allows him to slow play runs and thereby not get fooled by play action as often.
Well, let me ask you this, because again, we've seen him in a ton of mocks to the Cowboys at 20. If that was the pick, how would you feel?
I think it's a good pick. It's not my preferred pick necessarily at 20, but again, like we've talked about this, there are a lot of good options at 20. I put him in that list of guys where if that's the pick at 20, I feel solid about it. I think he's worthy of being a first round pick, even if he isn't as good as in coverage as you would normally think about being a first round pick. I think the benefits that he provides, especially as the game starts to turn around towards the running game a little bit, balance that out enough that he is worthy of that pick at 20.
A little Nick Bolton like from the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think, again, a guy like Nick Bolton drafted now probably goes a little bit higher. It is a little bit more valued because of the way the game is being played versus when he got drafted.
All right, let's talk about another linebacker that had all the production in the world at Texas Tech, and that's Jacob Rodriguez. Where do we slot him? Talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. We live in a world where you can stream anything, order food in minutes, and we carry supercomputers in our pockets. And somehow buying tickets to live events and games still feels complicated. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There has to be a better way. And there is. And that's why I use the Game Time app. It gives the advantage back to the fans, and it makes getting tickets simple. Whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy events, whatever you're into. I was just looking at the app a couple days ago, wanted to go to a hockey game. It's unbelievable how easy it is to get tickets. 2 taps and you have great seats locked in, fast, easy, and done. But my favorite part, my favorite feature is that you're going to see all of the fees included, so you're not surprised by anything at checkout. It just makes the entire process that much easier. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code Locked On for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Free agency is here, and so are we. So head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club, where we're gonna be chatting about free agency for the next couple of weeks. Use promo code free agency, all one word, no spaces, to get a free month of the Everydayer Club. Again, that is lockedoncowboys.supercast.com. All right, Landon, let's talk about Jacob Rodriguez, a very intriguing linebacker prospect who actually finished 5th in the Heisman voting this year. What did you see from Rodriguez on tape?
Yeah, somebody's going to need to explain this to me. Let's get into it, because slightly below average size linebacker. I mean, generally speaking, he's, similarly sized, honestly, to CJ Allen, which was, I thought,
he's actually taller than CJ Allen is. Yes.
Which is still wild. Right. But a little bit shorter, like not as not long, right? His arms are under 31 inch, they're 30 and 7/8, right? Came into the combine, and I think really showed you a level of athleticism that kind of shocked some people, right? And certainly, it made me interested to kind of go back and watch the tape again after having formed an impression of him just watching college football near the end of the year, right? I mean, he ran a 6'9" 3-cone, right? And that's pretty elite. And elite, yeah. And I think if you watch him in the later part of the season, you don't necessarily feel like you see that, but I think what you do see is ridiculous production. I mean, the guy forced 7 forced fumbles, had 4 interceptions, 11 tackles for loss, 2 defensive touchdowns. He won the Nagurski and the Bernick, and he's an All-American, and he's a Heisman finalist. He's a linebacker, guys. That's ridiculous. We talked about stops before. It's a PFF stat. It's one of my favorites. It constitutes, it's a tackle that's made by the player that constitutes as a success loss for the offense, right? It's a non-successful play. We talked about success rate as well. I love stops. I think it's a great indicator of defensive playmaking. He had 70 stops last year. And to put that into context, we're going to talk about we've already talked about CJ Allen. We're going to talk about Anthony Hill from Texas next. He had more stops in 2025 than those 2 players who are being drafted in the first 2 rounds this year combined. This guy was an incredibly productive player. I think that much is clear. What was surprising to me is turning on the tape, especially early in the season, and seeing an athlete that I couldn't believe, because the expectation is that, he's this guy that's going to he's got all this production, but he's probably going to be a mid-round pick. And if you turn on the late round tape, he moves pretty well. It looks like he looks good, but man, I feel like I turned on some of the early season tape. And he's an easy mover. He's comfortable in space. He can step out in the slot if he needs to be. He's bouncy. He's got bursty energy. He operates well when he's engaging with offensive linemen. He's, we know I've seen him already be instinctual and quick on his feet. But like the explosiveness that he had early in the season was really, really kind of surprising.
Can I go on that a little bit more? Because I'm with you. Like he's got natural football instincts. But if I were to say a knock on him, you can tell that he's somewhat new to the linebacker position, because there are times that he like takes missteps, but this is how he's around the football at all time. It's almost the best compliment that I can ever give a player, is that you're just a football player. And that's what Rodriguez is to me. I think as he progresses as a player, you'll see fewer coverage busts, you'll see fewer missteps, but you do see those on tape occasionally.
Yeah, he misses too many tackles. Like it is all the things that a young linebacker probably is just learning his way through, right? Yes. But the fact is that he's producing at such a ridiculous level while learning on the job that it's absolutely outrageous. And it's not just, coincidental at this point. Like it's clearly like, and you watch him do incredible things. Like that's the thing. I felt like my anticipation was that I was going to go in there and watch him be, a cleanup guy for all the stuff that you're seeing David Bailey do, but that wasn't the case. Like this is a guy who's, stepping in front of the ball to intercept it, running it back, and then hurdling an offensive player and spin. Like he's an incredible athlete at the position as well. So I think this is a situation where, he came into college football as a quarterback, was clearly needed to change positions. And I think he just was overlooked. And then as time went on and he finally got to the last few years of his season, he was incredibly productive at this point. So I think he's a guy that I'm not sure if he had something nagging. This is my last note. Not sure if he had something nagging. Some reports said he might've had an injury post Houston game, but it does definitely noticeable between the early and the late season. I think the tape is. Where does he win? He's just like exceptional, like at not exceptional. He's above average in almost every area. There's some stuff that he needs to kind of clean up as he gets more used to playing football, but he doesn't have like a defined weakness. He can blitz, he can cover, he can play the run. Unanswered questions. I guess my question is, why aren't people talking about this guy more? That's my thing. I really was shocked by a couple
things. I think the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator screws people up a little bit, because he's been in like the 90s or the 100 range for a while, and everybody just throws him into their third or fourth rounder, and they don't think about him as an elite prospect. All of a sudden, I looked at today, and I think he's like 40th on PFF's board. He's like 32 on the consensus board. It's like people are starting to catch up a little bit. But also, I think this is why players should try to do everything possible, during the draft process, because we went into the Senior Bowl having some concerns about his coverage ability.
Absolutely.
Shut up all those right away during the one-on-one drills. We had some concerns about the athleticism. Goes out there and has a fantastic combine performance. And now we're talking about a guy that was viewed, at least by the consensus, as a third-round pick, to somebody that might be like a low-end first-round pick or top of the second-round pick, because he's nailed the pre-draft process. I think you can tell I'm a big fan. He does have some warts. He's going to be 24 during his rookie season. He's not particularly long. He's not particularly big, but he just makes every single doggone play.
Yeah, he's just constantly around the football. He has a high level of football IQ, which is informing his instincts, and you can see that in his play. Again, you and I spent about 15 minutes, 20 minutes on a phone call after I was done with him, and I was beside myself. I cannot get over that this guy isn't more higher ranked, or even he talked about more highly.
He reminds me he's older, but he reminds me so much of Carson Schwesinger, who went at the top of the second round last year, who was another one of these kind of somewhat undersized linebackers that just made every play. Schwesinger landed in Cleveland, ended up becoming the defensive rookie of the year. I will not be shocked if we see something similar with Rodriguez, because he's just a baller, man.
Schwesinger, also another player who was very young at the position when he got drafted.
Yep.
I see a lot of similarities there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Anthony Hill, one of the more intriguing prospects in this class. I know there's a lot of Texas fans that want the Cowboys to draft him. Does he fit Christian Parker's defense? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old ways of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book appointments, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax, which now has in-person locations. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting with a real person who you know is going to take care of your taxes and get you every dollar possible. So head over to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Let's talk about Anthony Hill, because this was a player that has a wide range of opinions. I'll say that. A lot of people think he could be a first-round linebacker. I've seen other people have him on day 3. What do you think?
Yeah, this is the kind of typical Texas, player. You and I were talking about this a little bit, where he was a 5-star. He was the 17th overall prospect in the 2023 draft. And, he looks like the part out of Central Casting, right? He's, 6'2", 240 pounds. He's got 32 and 3/8, basically 32 and a half inch arms, right? And he's physical. He's a point and shoot linebacker. He's a freight train coming downhill. He's especially as a blitzer. When he's given a specific assignment or asked to be assertive or aggressive, he is a real asset and a plus player. But when he's asked to react and follow keys in the run, it appears he kind of struggles a little bit. And I think it might be an eye discipline issue, which is fixable. But he's very quick to trigger. And I mean that both in a positive and a negative way. He's comfy in zone drop. He's good in coverage, I think, because he's athletic and he's a good tackler. He's a solid tackler. But I think the reason that you're going to see such wide, opinions about him is that he's not going to be a great fit for every scheme.
No,
right?
He's not. No.
But having said that, I think he is a good fit for this scheme. I don't know that I'm going to take him if I'm looking forward to taking him in the first round or at 20 necessarily. But if the Cowboys were to trade back and they get a second round pick, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to him. Where does he win? He's an attacking downhill linebacker. Unanswered questions. Can you improve his ability to read his keys by just, giving him a little bit further instruction? And that's what I meant by this has felt like a real Texas player, is that this is a guy that is incredible athlete. You see it all there. You see all the pieces, but he doesn't quite do the football part always so well unless you give him a specific assignment, and then he's really good. Then if you're asking him to blitz through an A gap, he's aggressive, he's fast, he's big and strong, and he can take down the quarterback. If you're asking him to read and react while being a will linebacker off the ball in the 4-3, he may struggle a little bit.
So again, whenever you're scouting players, there's always going to be some biases that affect you, right? And maybe it's the Kenneth Murray biases of what happened last year in watching that player at Oklahoma. But there's a lot of similarities, good and bad. Kenneth Murray is a special athlete. Anthony Hill's an awesome athlete too, right? And I think Hill can be a much better version of this player. I think Hill is actually. I think he's what everybody wanted Kenneth Murray to be. My problem is I have a really hard time with these high cut linebackers that kind of have to go straight downhill and that aren't the most fluid. I would rather give up a little bit of speed for the guys that can move sideline to sideline really well. And I just don't think he's got that part to his game. And for me, that limits you a little bit what you can do in coverage.
I think I think we need to start adjusting our sight on this a little bit, though. And I'm speaking for all of Cowboy Nation here, not just Marcus and I, because as you start to get into a system where you have wide edge players, where you've got star players that are expected to be contributors, major contributors to the run, the need for the sideline to sideline running back versus the more downhill linebacker, it shifts. It's not that it's not important, and it's not that it shouldn't be ignored, but I think it's more okay for the Cowboys to look at players like this than it has been previously, because they aren't necessarily going to be asked to have to cover a bunch of ground in order to cover all the way. Things are going to be spilled back inside a lot more, and it's more about making sure that they cover this gap and then half the gap back there, and that they're able to be physical when they need to. Because here's the thing, they're going to blitz a lot. And they need guys who are good at blitzing, who can be, a faction, a part of this pass rushing group. So that's an important aspect of this as well.
I don't disagree. I think the thing that concerns me is there was a lot of talk about Anthony Hill going into the year, and he didn't really improve at all. Like, he really leveled off. And I think there were a lot of games you just didn't notice him at all, where you turn on the Jacob Rodriguez tape, and it's impossible to ignore him. So, but I see them ranked very similarly. So for you, if you had to stack Allen, Rodriguez, Hill, how would you do it?
I mean, I think it's Rodriguez and then a little gap, and then Allen. Rodriguez and Allen are probably pretty close. But yeah, Hill is a tier or two, tier and a half at least down on there. I would say a mid-second, late second, third pick was what I would say with him. A starting linebacker, a guy who could be a plus player for your defense, but not someone who I'm going to expect to be an all-pro Pro Bowler type guy anytime soon.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.